Hi guys. So we are, gosh, we're in week 4. I can't believe it. Oh, here comes Kim. And tonight I have this beautiful sister and friend, Marina Rangimarie, who I was talking to last week. Marina connected with me last week, and we had a really long catch up, really beautiful. And then I was just like, oh my gosh, I really, really want you to come and talk to my crew. And she has kindly agreed to come on tonight. So thank you so much for that. I'm really, really grateful. And Marina is this really beautiful, powerful soul with a lot of history, and she does incredible mahi for the land, and a lot of I'll let her talk to you about what she does, but a lot of ancestral work, a lot of healing and clearing, and a lot of making connections and unifying people. So she really understands this bringing together of all the different people that are drawn to the land in Aotearoa, and just the work that is being done across the land to help clear the pain that's held in there. So some of you know sort of about my trip to Castle Hill, but I went up Castle Hill with Marina and another super powerful Māori woman, Rawinia, and I was told that I would be climbing Castle Hill at 3 a.m. in the pitch black. We drove down, there was like, you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. Marina decides to do it barefoot, of course, in the freezing cold, gale force winds. We're climbing up this. It was so intense. Like, I lost everyone halfway up, and there was about 5 of us. It was Olive, 5 of us, I think, and I just went into this crazy zone of just like knowing that I had to lose everyone, knowing that I had to do that walk alone, that climb alone. And when I finally got to the top, all I was thinking was just like, like I've done this before at some time. And when I got to the top, I couldn't move. Like, I think about an hour later, I finally sort of looked up and I saw one of you, but everything was through this haze. It was like I was being held in another dimension, looking through a glaze. And I almost crawled over. I think it was like I was drunk. I was stumbling over to them, like, oh, there you are. And they managed to kind of get me to this big guardian stone, and that was it. I was KO for the whole day, wasn't I? I was just like, every time I tried to sit up, I'd just feel this hand going like that. And it was like I was completely and utterly punch drunk. Like, I could not even sit upright for like the whole day. And they were doing their mahi around me, and and I was completely like just conked out under this big guardian. And yeah, and then eventually we moved across to another piece of land where I sort of got a bit of energy back. But it was quite a powerful day. I mean, I'm really interested, Marina, in your perspective on what you feel happened that day.
Kia ora. Finally, good everybody. Yeah, that was a big day. That was my first wānanga, my first doing the mahi with anyone else around. It wasn't my other half. And you're going to the top of a mountain, and at the top of mountains there's always stone guardians. There's always a stone pole. It's always stone. And Rawaniya, your friend, was the one who had. She knew the pathway. So she sort of laid that out because there was that sacred water we went to as well. It was a very sacred puna. And that's basically that water comes out from underneath Castle Hill. The location itself and what I picked up on that trek up the hill was it was the one of the last locations for the celestial door that was actually open. Across the other side of Castle Hill is Flock Station. And I don't know if you know, what's his name? Freddie Silver, who's
Pretty
did
silver.
some studies.
Yeah.
Yes, does some studies. Well, there's a lot of his corridor goes in that direction. His conversation speaks about that area, and that was actually a battlefield. So you were feeling the weight of it. You were sort of forced into holding space because I'd never done anything with anyone else around, so I was just there to observe and just to look and listen. It's the first part of being on the whenua. First, you have to look and listen to what's happening on the land, what looks out of place. Sometimes things look out of place. But in these locations, you're just going to listen and receive. And sometimes you'll be challenged or tested. So I took a different route to you guys. You went up one side of the hill, and I went the warrior route that Rawaniya had pointed out. There's two ways to go. We'll go this way. That way's the warrior route. So it's a harder climb, but she basically indicated that's probably the one you need to take. And I had a big pack on my back. And so you were the whole time, it was like you had that pack on your chest. Because several times when you came to, you would just say, wow, I feel I've got this weight on my chest, this weight on my chest. And Danielle, I think, was the other lady, the young girl that was there. So it wasn't until well after sunrise that it was that you said to come back, because that location, a lot of the battles that happened in the nighttime, the remedy has to be applied in the nighttime. If the offence or the trespass occurred in the daytime, that's when you have to apply the remedy. You've got to match your time, so you've got to be in the place first, be comfortable and joyful, and this is lovely. To be able to hear something from the elementals, you'll hear, and you don't know how you're going to receive it. You might receive it by something you see a bird move, or something that makes you think, throws you on a remembrance line for something several years back that gives you the key to where you are. It could be something you hear, it could be something you smell. Your senses are activated when you're listening, because we call that the pūtaiao. So you have the taiao, which is nature, but the pūtaiao is the spiritual arena connected, the etheric field of nature. And you've got a human body, so you've got the same thing I have. You've got that same etheric field. We're all electromagnetic. Bottom line, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. If you were born a little tiny cute baby, then you've got the inherent right. And you have the ability to listen to the land. But do we provide the opportunity to do that? And most times that is not provided. And as such, we haven't even tapped into a lot of our potencies because we haven't tapped into the potencies because we're not in those spaces where we can receive. So when you go to those sacred spots, you don't know what you're going to get till you arrive. And it might be you first have to just sit and remember some really sad stuff, or look into some things that make you feel a lot of grief, or most of these sacred sites have things on them that are unnatural, and a lot of really bad things have occurred there because of the knowing and the belief of the potencies of those arenas. So just as we want to go to these places and bring in as much celestial light as we can and peace to the earth through our feet, other people are doing the same, and Kuratawhiti is one of them. My niece happened to be there one evening during a full moon, specific time, and they were going to stay the night, and at midnight there was a reaction that occurred. And when she shared that with me, I knew that, that place has been used in a way that's going against everything else we do. So when you organize collectively to go to those places, knowing that others have put ugly stuff there, you don't have to see it, you don't have to feel it, you don't have to look into it even. You just have to be conscious that it's been there, because then you know the shadow can't hide from you. It can't trick you, no smokes and mirrors there, because you're going in, okay, so some really bad things have happened here. And in Kuratawhiti, 2 girls took their lives off that cliff we walked past. And we stopped on that stone, and I got pulled onto the flat stone, and I sat there. And then I saw another stone ledge up on the hill face, and above that ledge was this giant head. All I could see was a giant head, and he had his tongue poking out to me. And it just didn't feel, he didn't feel good. It was a negative response. And all I got in my heart, because I knew about those 2 girls that had jumped, and it was suicide, daughters who had had children to their fathers. And both of them, one was pushed, one took her own life. So I ended up going up on the ledge. The remedy was just to remember what love was really about. And when I saw that beast, he was with a stone figure, he was the embodiment of all of that negative energy. They call it loosh. All of that negative modi, that negative etheric energy, they keep in a place by putting a memorial there, or putting something there that you can look at and focus into. Well, they manifest as beings as well, elemental beings. And if you know what they look like and then you can see them, they'll show themselves and challenge you. So hence he was poking his tongue out, because in that arena, that's a challenge. Well, I didn't know that. I wasn't going there to fight anybody. So I just saw that being and knew that he wasn't supposed to be there. And I basically said, if you're either working for them, then you either need to leave the field, or you come and talk to me. And if you do leave, I will show you what love looks like down here for real. And he was so intrigued, because these elementals, they don't have the whatu manawa, they don't have the pineal gland, and they don't have the heart space. We have that. Humans are unique because we've got the head space, the heart space, and us women have the 3rd stone, and only we have the whare. And it doesn't matter whether your womb is functional or not. It doesn't matter if you were born with one. You have the 3 stones. And when they're in alignment, the elementals know that, and they can communicate freely. This being was so intrigued by what it might possibly look like, and might offer, what does love look like? Because I'm just thinking I could sing to it. I'll sing a song of love. And it was a Sanskrit song that as soon as I'd finished, he had gone. And every time I went thereafter, there was no appearance of this being's face. So he chose to abandon all of his Kabbalese big boys, because he wanted to know what love looked like from a girl. And when I came to and finished singing, I looked down, and there were 2 or 3 climbers, and they had stopped and were listening to me sing. And when you're singing to an elemental, you have to really personify your expression, because you have to look at that tree or that stone as if it was a loved one, as if it was really there, because it's embodied, and you're seeing its embodiment. Therefore, okay, I see you as my gorgeous darling Taki. La 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 la, I'll sing to you like this. How does that feel? And they can feel your love. You see it in the Matrix, when that woman just wants a kiss from Neo. She doesn't want anything else. She just wants a kiss, to feel what his kiss felt like when he's kissing Trinity. And that's the story of Krishna and Radharani, and the embodiment of love via that Vedic template, the angelic spaces, where there was no anxiety, because we were just in love with everything. So that being, when I realized that being vacated the field so easily, it was clear to me that, wow, the remedy is quite simple. We just haven't looked for it. And all of us have bloodlines to 4 ancestors. We've got 2 grandparents on both sides. So you've got 4 inherent rights. You've got 4 lines into the earth, into Papa Tuanuku, into the Earth Mother, that through your feet you're remembered. And then through your Sky Father, we remember our heavenly selves, and that desire to be, tethered together with a bit in between. So a lot of the mahi a lot of the work that I've had to do, I've learned off the cuff. And so that was my first off the cuff with women around. And so in the space that you ladies held, when when the stone guardian that was on the land, that relates to the blood and bone that's been laid. The same thing occurs when you're dealing with on a mountaintop and you want to speak to an angelic. Well, they're going to send you the same thing. It's still a challenge. It's going to test you, but it can be, and it depends on who you are and what you fear, what you don't like, the things that trigger you. That's the stuff that they will bring onto the table to poke you with, to test you. And so when that being revealed himself and showed an ugly face, I'm like, oh, you're so beautiful. But the work that was done once the sun came up was recognized by those beings. So my test was like I don't know, I ended up doing what I do, and that is to recognize we're a natural being. So when we talk about taniwha, they're natural elemental beings, they're not embodied. They are protectorates in the elemental arena, the etheric arena, and they have the ability to, they're the ones that a stone will appear in front of you, you fall over and bang your head when you weren't respectful, or a bird will call and you turn your head before you whack into something. They either push you or pull you, in the sense of they're looking at your heart, because it's all about our heart space. They're elemental, so they follow Papa Tuanuku, they follow nature, not the heavenly realms. All of these elementals are listening to a different frequency, but it's the same. Just the chakra, the purple chakra, the crown, and the base are the same frequency, eh? We already know that the same frequency for the crown and the base is the same, but it's got to go through what I call the meat bag. So it's got to go through all of the layers, through the digestion, down through the stool. That's really quite gross. So that's why the angelics didn't really like us much, because we do things like poo and have things that come out of our faces, and there's a lot of things that were rejected on the elemental template. So natural protectorates like ogres, who are just elemental beings who bathe at nighttime instead of daytime. But when the wars started between the angelic realms and the earth realms, we don't know or remember who did what wrong. And we're told that this is right and that is wrong, this is good and this is evil. But when you're looking at an elemental arena, it's all, you already know it because you've got the five senses. So part of breaking the bind of the entrapment that we're collectively stuck in requires the help of artifacts and things that have already been left here for us. And in New Zealand, here in Aotearoa, we hold the most artifacts in the entire globe. So I only recently found that out. I knew that there was a family in the South Island that had a private collection of 400 artifacts, Maori artifacts, and they energetically are waking up and require the lineage presence. They require to be seen, to be clean, to be heard. And everyone here in the Zoom, we're all on the same template. We're all on that same Papa Tuanuku template. But we're not told about the other layers and the ancestry of Papa Tuanuku, of Gaia, because there are many layers underneath her. And places like Rotoponamu and Taupo are areas that are connected to those older templates. It's the last Lemurian temple in the center of Taupo, and that connects to Rotoponamu, is where the heart stone sits. And over in Kaimanawa Wall, which is a cylindrical pyramid, similar to the Vietnamese portai, the Vietnamese hats that they would wear, that are like a sun. Yeah, the pyramids are round. They're not four-sided. So Akaroa is another big connection to, we're all living on this land that needs as many tangata whenua, as many human beings as that can, to just look and listen. And so, yeah, there's a pretty big share there. And if I bring it back down to the artifact that I was given, and so the work that was done in Taupo, and so we had 2019 at Kura Tawhiti at Castle Hill, and I went back there every year in December. I'm going back this year on 22nd on solstice, and this time I'll go and stay overnight and be there for the sunrise and just hold the entire night. And so if I'm able to, I'll get away with lighting a fire, because when you light a fire, especially from midnight is when all the bad stuff starts. They start their bad stuff at midnight, it goes right through to about just before sunrise. So the real work that's required the most are those ghastly hours. It's the hardest time to meditate. Midnight can be terrible on the body. You feel groggy, you feel sluggish, but we can get up between 3 and 4 because they're already finished and they're in the cleanup process. So we feel that lightness after 3 or 4 because it relates to they're following the calendar, the sun and the moon anyway. Every calendar they're following. So it doesn't matter which one resonates for you. They're already working it. So you're combating it by being in action. So by knowing that, you already amplify what you've got to offer by 1,000-fold. By knowing, I know that there's things happening right now. So when I do my mahi at midnight, I'm holding not for what they're doing, but for the children in the moment who are going through the suffrage. Because I don't have a choice about seeing them. I started seeing them about 4 years ago, and I can see them under my feet. And for the last probably, as the work got more intense in this arena, I stopped hearing them and I stopped giving them those cuddles. But in a way, I've done the hard yards because here in Christchurch is where the adrenochrome is made. And so this is a lot of the bad stuff happened in certain locations, and Christchurch is one of them. And so this is the place that as a child, I did all the light work already because the joy comes through the child's play, and remembering your joy mode and remembering how to feel joyful when you're surrounded by darkness and ugliness is the most difficult weapon, but the most powerful. Because if you're in the middle of one of those dark spaces at midnight and you're able to laugh or you're able to start clapping and sing something that brings a joy mode, it brings it's like a crashing of cymbals. You immediately disrupt everything they've got in place and they won't be able to recalibrate and start again. So Fridays and Saturdays, it's happening every single weekend, all across the globe. So there's no time off if you really look at it too fully. So you got to be careful. You don't want to. So this is about us healing the whenua, because if we do the land, everything on top of it is affected. And I already know that we've got the support of the elementals. I already know that we've been given the first seat on the Galactic Federation and the Galactic Councils. Humans now have a seat. I've heard it in a lot of different arenas. Yep, humans have now got a seat. What these people don't realize is that it's for a woman. It's not for man. They believe in all of their templates have been set up by males. And I'm not talking about male female divisions. I'm talking about the first humans into this arena were female. That's why our ancestors' symbols in Māoritanga is the haka, the hands up and the legs out. We were giving birth and fighting at the same time. So the nannies were fierce, but at the same time they were loving. And we got angry once they started taking the babies off us. Because when you look at the ways the stories have been shared, no one talks about Lilith, but Lilith was Eve's eldest sister. She refused to accept the template of them taking her babies and she bailed. That's why they changed the arena. That's why they changed the view. They removed more out of our DNA. Oh, better make sure the next line doesn't have this memory and that memory and that memory and that memory. But they're all coming back now, whether you want it or not. We're all getting the remembrance in our bones. Because if you've got bones, sinew, blood, and muscle, well, that makes you in alignment and a living spark operating your pineal gland, your heart stone, and your wharitangata, your womb. That's our real alignment. Then you'll find the path. And now that this artifact has been released, this artifact that I'm going to show you, ladies, was found by my daughter in Chichen Itza, right at the perfect sun time. I was over here doing my karakia from the mountains. And when you're standing somewhere and you do your karakia, as far as you're able to see with your wisdom eye, when you close your eyes and you can visualize places you've been, etc., that's how far your karakia is going. That's how far your prayer, how your devotional service can resonate, how far you can see and hear. So I always do it to mountaintop to mountaintop to mountaintop to mountaintop, all the way around the globe till it gets back to me. And I just figure I'm covering everyone's bases then. Because if we do things for ourselves, you're only going to hear half the story. If you follow your father's line, what about your mother's story? What about your mother's mother? What about your mother's father? because you've got 6 going back, eh? So you've got a lot of access to a lot of knowledge, because when you're born, you've got immediate, uh, we don't recognize it, but we have access to our ancestry lines. You just got to tap into your joy mode to find what are your key codes, what makes you passionate, and only you know that. That's why they say, seek ye first the kingdom within, because only you know what works for you. You know exactly what doesn't, but how well do you know what does work for you? Because that right there, then you extinguish any doubt. Because if you know what works for you, well, I feel this when that happens, so I don't care what you say or what it looks like, I'm going that way. And I had to do that in order to get to the position that I'm in. And so when we were up at Kuratawhiti that day with you, and you were asleep and everyone was bombed, when I was being challenged in the upper arena, I didn't have much oomph left. And I looked around and I was lying on the ground with my feet in the air, doing some sort of yoga poses, because quite often my body will go into a yoga pose and I'm stretching. And I don't even know which one it's called, but it feels good and I'll get a click. And when you get a real soft little click, you've just broken an ancestral bind. The real tiny little clicks. You do that stretch. Oh, God, that feels good. And it's a tiny little ping. But if you take note of where it is, that's often when you've just snapped an ancestral bind. Your great grandfather signed a deal with a baddie. He got hooked in, blah, blah, blah. You just freed yourself and you don't know because you weren't there. And so when that being showed up and I felt my little clicks, I looked over and all of the women were lying down fast asleep. And I looked up and I went, oh, you're in trouble now. Because all those ladies are in the astral and asleep, and they're way more powerful when their bodies are at rest. And that being immediately disappeared, and the triangle portal opened right above me. Light came out of it, and I saw coming into my hand, I can only describe them as, I don't know, plasma balls. I knew that they were weaponry of some kind, and we got 5. And when I realized, oh, okay, it's come into my hand, so that's the magnetic. So it went into my magnetic hand, and that's why I got this tamoko tattooed there. So it was originally Mindy, and I would use it when I'm doing just a mudra or the demons go away one. That is literally, once you touch it on your fingers, is protection against all of the demonic realms. And they'll bow down and go, okay, yep, sweet. Because their tikanga, their laws are LORE. So a demon will never challenge an innocent person with a good heart, because he already knows, shit, if I do that, the angels they've got a right to attack. Hey, because they've just breached kawa. So that's the arena we're in now. We've got massive protectorates around us, angelic flanks to the max, because now the elementals are working with the angelics, who are also watching as the whenua, the earth-born mana whenua. And that's not us, that's the elementals, as in the Patupaiarehi, the fairy folk, the Ponaturi, most people call them mermaidians, the people of the water, and the Turehu, and they are the ones of the forest. Oh, and suddenly all the dogs in the area are barking off. So those 3 whakapapa into Taupō. So Taupō, the last Lemurian temple, there's a celestial gate there, and the heart is Rotaponamu, but Rotaponamu has had a makutu on it for a long time. No one's cleared that stuff. So all the work that's done, it gets in there, but it's actually, there's a harvest going on. It's like a tapping. And when they've got, you've got a beautiful dock reserve, and then over here, you've got this really ugly dead tree. And if you go behind that bush and around this corner, you'll find something that shouldn't be there. And all of these domains, all of our reserves have these things that shouldn't be there, because that's how the energetic template's held. And there's only one boring looking white man working for Doc who does these things, but because he's willing to do things that most people would perceive as evil, it's no different to what a hunter would do. Hunters do things that these we call them dark magicians, a family of Germans call them, and they are running on the back foot. They are totally on the back foot, that they are doing evil sorcery in daylight. Literally, we had experience in Invercargill last year and earlier this year, where they literally put black magic on the ground in front of us while we sat outside at a cafe having coffee. and nobody noticed. And we just walked over and picked it up and looked around with disgust and then cleared it. So they knew that, oh, damn, it didn't work. We had already found where their dark altar was. And when you find a lock, you have to be prepared to hold it for 3 nights. You've got to break it. If you break it at the right moon and you stay there those 3 nights, so they can't come and do their dirty from midnight, because we found that place because the first morning when we were there, oh, let's pull over here, I'll stay here. Then we get woken up by someone coming in the early hours in a truck. And then they're, oh, we're there. Sorry, you can't do your bit. They leave and the child's safe, because a lot of the magic that's used is either blood or sex based. And so a lot of us don't, you don't want to look into that arena, but that's what it is. That's what it is. It's that ghastly. That's why we don't want to look. And it's so we need to help these children by giving them the permission to stand up. Because if they know they're already embedded in a spiritual arena and they can't tell us about it, because they already know they're tagged. If I tell you anything to you, I'm going to get hurt, or my sister's going to get hurt, or mum's going to get hurt. Same with these mamas. So I had to learn when I did the 5 months on the land at Taupo to really break their dark altar on that Lemurian temple. I had to hold that fire 5 months, and it was the kids and I 24/7. So it was, the recall of that story is pretty intense, but it's worth hearing, because when you realize, wow, all we have to do is observe and be present and hold the love and acknowledge those children. You don't have to engage them, but you do look at them, and you look at those kids with, I love you, darling, I'm here with you. And then we went in after they leave, and then we just showing, oh, it's them.
Oh,
Them.
Marina, you froze at a really, we were all like, ah.
Oh, wow, was it? These are other markers too, though, eh? This is a good way to show, because I'm amazed that we haven't gotten stuck yet. But I can see that my eyes have changed. And so
There's
we're moving
been some
into
glitching,
moving
yeah.
in and out of rangis. So
Mm.
I'll drop a rangi karakia, and I'll just hold it for a wee bit to see if I can calibrate. Because I think we were at Taupo. We need to stay in that, because that Lemurian temple, we all whakapapa to that. We all whakapapa to the Central North Island, because that's the cursed land. The Ika was the cursed land from the Bible. It was pulled up, and Maui said, "Don't mess with the land until I've retrieved the fish hook and done the karakia," because it was fished up from underneath. So what was that? And we on the South Island is stone, because Pounamu was here, but she wasn't the elder. She was the younger, because there was another Po before her. Because Pounamu is one arena, Potini is another, and then you have Altea, which connects to the Lemurian side, and that's the blue-green stone, and that's all around Taupo. But that's why Taupo you get the obsidian, and so obsidian and pumice. So I'll just run through some of the rangis, because I'm feeling I'm sweating. Pinatira ako to kanui ko to koro ko to tabu ya iyo matuanui ya rangi nui rangi tom ku rangi parari rangi mare ku rangi matoi tau rangi rangi matoira rangi nui ka te rangi te wana na rangi na una ori tiri tiri o matangi piki piki o rangi ha pai atu ki a matangi reia rangi tau maku rangi parari rangi mare ku rangi matoi tau rangi rangi matoi rangi nui ka te rangi te wana wana rangi na una ori tiri tiri o matangi tiki tiki o rangi ha pai atu ki a matangi reia. But try to do it from the camera's weird. This is the stone that was given in the Ashley River when I was at the water, when my daughter was climbing the mountains in South America. So she walked up one mountain to look across and take photos at another that was literally exploding. It's a tourist thing. And there are 5 mountains in South America that are the Kaitiaki, the guardians of us, for us, via these these trees, these rako that sit on the water, and they're twins. There's one over there and there's one here, Wanaka for us. So this was given to me when she was up on that mountain, and I do have a photo of it. But she was given the codes of the fire. So I guess each stone has a fire component. They have the elementals, their protectorates that are around them. So they've got to have at least 5 other kaitiaki around them. And so that was given at that time. So she took a photo of the fire, and in the fire they showed their fire guardian, and you can see him clear as a bell. And I'll share the photo with Mel so that she can send it out with this. And you can literally see his arms and his legs sitting in the fire, and he's holding the sticks in the fire, doing the work with her. So what I just recited to you are the 12 rangis, the 12 heavenly layers, to the very top, Mātangi Reia. Well, that's just the line that the sun follows. This is the top of the firmament. Whereas our other half connected to our whatu manua, our higher self is on the outside of that. So we're well beyond the jurisdiction of the firmament, which demons aren't. Evil can't go outside the firmament, is the bottom line. And we can. And so when that was given, the fire code was given, she was born of the wind, so she already had that code. And when she went to Chichen Itza, she also took photos. They showed within the photo the multidimensional beings that were in the background that will also be in the photos that I send Mel. And you really got to zoom in and take time with photos. You really got to go right up in and get a really good look of things and sit with it for a bit. Because elementals reveal themselves either in the first split second, your intuition, bing, oh, I thought that was a bird, but it's a stone. I thought that was a dog, but it's a piece of wood. They might show you an animal and they're giving you a clue as to pathways for yourself. So there's a line pull off then. So when she was given permission to receive this artifact, the tourist group went that way, and a twinkly star pulled her this way. And all of a sudden, there's no guard on the gate where there normally is always people at the line. And she just stepped over. And she knows when you step in a sacred space that you have to be mindful of where you step. You don't worry about the fences. You worry about where you're placing your feet and what intent you're walking with. And if you're acknowledging while you're walking and exploring the elementals around you, and she went over to where she saw the sparkly star, and she looked down and she just saw this little tiny, like a crystal. And so she went to grab it, and she had to sort of dig around it a bit. Well, then she ended up having to dig using both hands, and dug, and it was quite a significant piece, and it was down like that. So it was quite about as long as my hand. And so she took it from there. It was so caked in mud that she didn't know what it was really, outside of she could see black obsidian. And when she came home, her bag was emptied out, and it wasn't found. And so that is another indication. As from the wairua, from the spiritual arena, these are the key codes for permission, because that's how God works mysterious ways and all that, by the things that just are allowed to happen. Same as the untoward. When something bad happens, it's because this was trespassed in that way. You had that whakapapa. You didn't know that your great-great-grandfather had a debt in this arena. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Hey? And people go in and not realize what they are prepared for. So there is a lot of danger out there, but only to those who are seeking self-glorification, only to those who are only thinking about themselves. If you're completely focused on your own, on yourself and self-gain, you're going to get hit. You're going to get all the booby traps. You're going to get all the tests. But if your heart is clean and you know you're doing it for more than just yourself, even if it's just for your dog and your children or whatever, as long as it's outside of you and you're choosing to do the actions for the collective. So I was given this as the top of a beautiful chest that I was given. It's very thick, handmade one. was given to me by this beautiful Canadian woman, as tall as she's like 7 foot, and she's a clinical psychologist who got us to come and do some work at her house next door, which is a rental because the tenants wouldn't carry on their tenancy because of paranormal activity. So where she lives in Titirangi, well, it was a war field of 3,000 warriors. You literally got to install, like what she did, she had to install a labyrinth and a massive stone on her land to stop the disturbances. And it took her 2 or 3 years to settle them. She didn't know what was happening up and down the street and everywhere else because they didn't know about 3,000 warriors. So we went there to do some work there. And as a token, she gave me a beautiful chest that is the perfect fit for this artifact. Absolutely perfect fit. And this symbology here, I didn't know it until she gave it to me, that these are the ancestral templates for Māori, because the original templates for the firstborn were black, white, and red. Hey, because the darkness is first, light came from the darkness, and then out came the blood. You know, the manifestation of us is pretty crude, but you know, in the rainbow, it goes black, white, red, up to purple. Hey, we know it goes up to purple. So if you're working with the whenua, you're going the opposite way. You don't come from the purple chakra down because that's the rangi way, that's the sky way. When you're working from the earth, it's from the feet up. So I can feel all the template rising. This is very, you can took it out. And so Tumi, Tumi is his name. So that's one of my original templates is the Indian. So I move into that that mode because it delivers things really fast. They've got a good template. So this bit of silk was a piece that was left by my tane. So we're pulling him into this white because this is Wahin's mahi. Clearing the whenua is actually the job of the woman. It's actually our job. So we were pushed into the cleaning job, but the wrong cleaning job. And so we've sort of lost our original directives. So Tumi was given to restore what was laid. This blade has never been spilled with blood. It's an obsidian piece that's been cut with obsidian. And this character, Tumi, is a celestial embodiment. Because if you look at the figure that's been doned, he is very stiff and still, indicating he's not a priest or a tohunga or a kaitiaki because he hasn't got anything in his hands. He's not in any pose or any action. He's still. He's wearing the mahi. So that eagle has a whatu manua, has a pineal gland, eh? And we know that the 13th constellation, I'm trying to get myself in that picture. How do I do that? The 13th constellation was the hokioi. The eagle was removed from the celestial template to give us 12 zodiacs. So they've always been working with 13, and every native line is 13. Hence, your DNA isn't 2-strand. And so this character here, so if you look closely at him, I'll just keep it up close as I can. It's made from a clay, and the clay is actually, I don't know if you can see it clearly, turquoise and malachite. So I don't know what they would have used to bind, but you can see there the lap, which is the traditional cover over the girdle. And then you got the X's on the side, which is the weaving. He has the neck piece, like what the masons are doning. You know, they're copying. Everything that they've got on the evil template is a mimicry of nature. So who's going to have the authority in that arena? You remembering nature, or them in their dumb ego stuff? So I don't know whether these are dreadlocks or feathers. I think it's a combination, because there's a whakapapa of the ancestry on the Māori line of an ancestor called Huru Manu. Huru means the hairy one, like a mammal, and of course Manu means bird. So one of my ancestors that landed on the Kaingaroa Plains from my grandmother's line was Tahu Mātua, and he arrived on a giant hokioi. So the whakapapa of Taupō is the eagle, because he landed there and left the artifacts here. So Tibetan scrolls are here, Egyptian scepters, All of these things are here on the whenua. So as long as we know they're here in Aotearoa and we come together, and this just has to be present with us. We just have to have Tumi beside us, knowing that the obsidian's job was always to slice the veil, and we are the wearers of the eagle by birthright because we were born here. So if you're born into a human body, well, you've already got inherent right. That's why that saying in common law, you are all born free and equal. We are all born free and equal, even when you're born into shackles. And so this character here, I think this must connect to, I believe, some galactic contracts, because everything, all artifacts were dealings. They'd be brought out after, during, through a ceremony, and that becomes the artifact. So you have the ability to do the same. So when I go to a location and I do work, sometimes I'll be given a beautiful stone. I've got like my whole garden's full of them. Got some big ones and some small ones, and a lot of the times you're asked to leave some of your most treasured ones. Sometimes they have the power to heal a whenua because of how much that crystal means to you. And sometimes they'll say, "Oh, could you leave that here?" And you'll sort of second guess yourself. "Oh, I probably shouldn't." Nah. Someone might take it, is a common one. But I learned the hard way. You lose it, otherwise it gets taken from you anyway if you don't leave it where it wants to be. So there's a lot of work that's being screamed out for now, and everyone has the access codes. Everyone has the ability to hear it, because if you've got an active pineal gland and a loving heart and a womb, well, you're already there. Not saying that men don't, but men came through with the heart stone. We came through with the whatumanawa, with the thinking capacity, with the head stone, because we know how everything works. We know where things are supposed to go. We know what does and doesn't work. And men came through with the heart stone because they just were supposed to be lovers, so to speak. They're just supposed to love us because that's what procreation is, eh? It's that coming forth of the line. And so we don't remember our ancestral wars when the gods started fighting. In the Māori arena, we call that te pairangi. And te pairangi, that only talks about the 20 wars, 20 main wars of the gods. And they discovered when they could kill each other down here under the firmament, that when they died, they turned to stone, some of them. So there are some locations like Castle Hill where a lot of the ancestors fell. And that's why you see stone that looks like a head, or it looks like this. I've got photos of a clearing we did in Dunedin. There's 3 pyramids in Dunedin on the coastline there, 10 minutes from town. And one of them has there's a cave inside it. And I found the cave, and it actually wasn't a cave. We did the work on it, took the photos, came out of there. Oh, it was a giant skull. So had we known that when we went in there, I might have thought differently. I might have reacted. I don't know. I probably wouldn't have gone in through the eye and up and sat onto the space. But if I hadn't have gone in there and explored, I wouldn't have found the throne. And there was literally 3 slabs of stone, that perfect H. And I thought, well, I'm not sitting on this throne, but I'll put my ass on the arm of it. Because sometimes you actually have to desecrate their sacred spaces with your, what we call paru, your grub. Your paru is the stuff that comes off you that you don't like, your mucus, all 9 portals leak something. And that's why poo and pee is always used in evil practices. They pee and they poo, they inseminate, and they draw blood. That's part of their template. So the way, I'm already full vegan, and almost 7 of my children are vegan. And so there's no way I'm going to any arena and offering anything up. And when I realized the level of support we had from the elementals, it was given in the form of a literal sacrifice. A bird flew in my car window while I was driving to the ferry. I kid you not, the window was open this far, driver's side, going past on the way to Picton, those dead marshes. I had to do work on the goddess that was there. She was entrapped in a really ugly state, an ugly state of witchery. So I had to remember her glory. She was freed. The next time I passed there, this bird, because it was blood sacrifice that locked her in, this bird hit the window, broke its neck, and landed in my lap. So I was still traveling, immediately put my hand down, knowing, oh my God, growling it like a mother. How dare you do that? I would have taken the sore finger. And at the same time, feeling the sadness that she had given herself, um, all of those spaces. I realized in that minute that when blood is required, you never have to take it because the elementals, that's why whales beach. That's why animals die for no reason. That's why your cat goes and dies on you. That's why your dog goes and dies for no reason, something that comes out of the blue. They are literally taking the hit for you because of their love for you. That's part of the celestial agreements. So dogs and cats are the main ones for it because there are contracts with Lyra with the cats and Sirius, which is Canis Major, Canis Minor. That's the dog contract, the dog star contracts. Then you got the cat contracts. I had to be the one to break it to them that, sorry, dogs, you came from Lyra. So the history, they all come from each other. So when the dogs found out that they descend from the cats before they all came from Lupus, which was the wolf, there was, you understand why dogs and cats hate each other down here and why you're scared of flies and why spiders and flies eat each other, why you're scared of spiders, because during those wars, the spiders, all the beings that are here have been locked in here. There's not many that are actually from this realm. Most of the animals were locked in here. So every time an ancestor lost the war, all of his army was locked in here. So the ants' ancestors were giants. Spiders were the size of houses. So you can understand why you fear insects when you remember some of those wars, because they were terrifying to us. How do you win when a being's got an exoskeleton? And we're soft on the outside. You're very vulnerable. But that's the past. And by remembering those spaces, we get the access codes to what we need now, because we're in the most unique space-time ever. Where we're going through hasn't happened for millions of eons. And because of that, our amplitude is unlimited. It's literally the universe is saying, how much can you handle? How much light do you want? How much celestial energy can you digest? And they'll make you purify yourself. Because if you abstain from a whole lot of things, well, you've got more free space, whether it's time space, whether it's energy space, whether it's thinking space, you've got more opportunity to engage those multidimensionals, the elementals, when you can focus. And that's just by stopping and listening, because that's what we've all got. We've all got that ability to listen and be still and then start to notice what's going on around you. And the better you know yourself, so when you know on these moons, I can write a lot better, or I'm definitely way more communicative. So you start to gauge what your 3-4 days are of power time, because every month you've got 3 or 4 days of super mega amplitude. And then, of course, you've got the other ebb. You've got the upside and then you've got the downside. And it changes. It used to be static. When I was studying it in 2008 on for my son at the time, it wasn't, my other son said, "Ooh, there's a random hand coming out of nowhere." When you start studying yourself, you start to work out your power times. And when you've got your lows, that's the time to challenge yourself. When things are the hardest, when you're triggered, and when you hear something that immediately pisses you off or immediately makes you want to react, you've got to stop and look into it. Ignore the deliverer, ignore the messenger. Why do you feel that way? How come I suddenly reacted like that? What's that about? Where's that coming from? Follow that line, because that line, if you've still got those triggers, that's the line they're going to tug on. And it's best you do it when you can see it on your own and you're in your comfort space, and when you're out there on the field. And then suddenly people will just go into tears. But at the same time, when you're in the locations, you need to be able to discharge. And sometimes all they need you to do in a location to clear all of the millennia of ugly stuff is to cry your eyes out to a state where you're pouring, the state where it's coming out your nose. And you look the ugliest, you're dribbling, you're snotting. And I've been pulled into those states a couple of times with the children around, and I'm able to hold it and turn around to the kids and say, "Don't worry, guys, it's not really me. Just ignore the snot." While my daughter's looking at me like, "Ew, mom." But because I'm able to do that, it amplifies, because you're still keeping the joy in. You're going to look a bit crazy to dig in to finding your powerhouse, because the matrix has got you so locked into your roles. How many roles have you got? The role of mother, employee, teacher, sister, cousin, friend, trainer, all the things you do. So where are you in your quiet time? Because you're none of those roles in that time, eh? When you're alone in the shower, when you're doing your hair, you're none of those roles, just you. And we call that mana motu hake. That's autonomy. So when you know thyself and you fully recognize what your passions are, you got to embody it and grab it. And sometimes it makes you do random things and you look nutty. But if you can articulate yourself as to why you're doing it, hey, well, I might look like that, but did you know that I feel this way when I do that? Those around you might start to hear you and recognize it in themselves, because you'll get challenged mostly from your loved ones. The hardest, you'll probably find that the people you love the most have the opposite key codes. That's part of the contract too. That love, well, love goes up and down, doesn't it? And you got to know the person you love so well that you handle the stuff you don't like. But first, we've got to love the stuff we don't like about us, or the things we're not comfortable with, before we tackle the partners or the children, and before we can even get to the bigger picture. Because if we aren't holding on to ourselves firmly, then you got to doubt yourself when you're tested. And right now, there's so many elemental beings, multidimensional beings that are waiting to work with us, but nobody's listening. They're not noticing that random single leaf that just rolled past you. You just so happen to see it turn ever like it was slow motion. Or you're driving along and you suddenly see a bumblebee and you notice him fly past. They seem insignificant, but if it's a natural event like an animal or a bug or a leaf, well, it's connected to an arena we've forgotten about. Because we're the only beings in this world that cooks their food. We're the only beings who poop in the same place we sleep, because we have that inside our houses now, toilets, and we cook and we sleep and we wash in the same space now. But originally, all the tribes down here didn't. We ate in one location, we washed in one location, we did spiritual practice in every location, and then you slept and you had your own time in another, and that was only like 10% of the time indoors. You look at the original templates of indigenous lines, they spent more time outside than inside. So we're inverted now. So unpacking is not easy, but if you want to do it fast, you just jump into that joy mode. If you can access that inner child, or better still, the inner grandchild, we call that the mokopuna. So you have the parents, the matua, then you have the tamariki, and then you have the mokopuna. The mokopuna is often the one that gets the spiritual abilities in the bloodline. It usually comes into the grandchild when it comes from a line. So you will be holding the power packs of your grandparents. So my grandmother was a full-blooded Maori. Her first language was English, and she was given permission to break a betrothal to marry a Scotsman. And he was also the first to marry outside of his line. And so I'm called a quarter caste in the 80s. That saying was still being used, but I was born down here. So I wasn't born on the Ika, where I wasn't born on the cursed land, where my ancestry gets hit the hardest. So I can traverse spaces, and you'll find you can traverse spaces your grandparents couldn't, because remember, you wear your ancestors in your bones, but you're not them. You are the living representative of your ancestors. And if you look at the microscopic view of bone, we call it koiwi. The bones were sacred to native lines, because in koiwi, if you look under a microscope, it's porous. Another random hand somewhere. Ooh, yeah. Look at this rogue hand.
I didn't think that one was making sense. I was like, what?
Going somewhere. If you look at bone under a microscope, it looks like a sponge. Do you know where the Akashic record sits, lady? In those holes. Each one of those pores is an ancestor's memories. So that's why they say, oh, rattle your bones. That's why they use bone in these ceremonies. That's why bones were sometimes turned into flutes. It wasn't to trespass, it was to honor, because certain body parts, you'll have in your body one area that gives you the most grief, an old injury, a predisposition to something. It'll be something in your body that always gives you grief, whether it's your, your teeth or your back or your neck. So if you look into that line, you'll find your ancestors have all had that back, and there'll be one ancestor that had something that occurred that created that ripple in the line. Because when we're clearing the whenua, you get the free reign access to clear your whakapapa. But you've got to do the land first. And while you're there, you might not remember it or know it at the time. You'll receive the downloads for your own remedies. And like I said, when you do that stretch or you're on the land and it wants you to sing, and then all of a sudden, everywhere I go, they want me to dance. So I'll just move into a posture, and I would often disguise the work by putting headphones on and listening to music. So if I noticed somebody was watching me, I'd sort of pretend, make it a bit more animated so it looked like I was dancing. Oh, she's just, you don't want to be too obvious. But what I realized that through music, the beings who don't have a whatu manawa, who don't have a pineal gland, and don't have the manawa, the heart stone, they can learn through literature and music. That's why it's so popular to the cabal. They don't feel anything. That's why they put so much emphasis on art and literature, because that's the only way they can feel. They can get a sense of it. So when you're dealing with galactic communities who are more connected, the galactics, everybody thinks, oh yeah, I work with the galactics. Well, do you know that they come from the bug line? That's why they're very altruistic, they're very one-minded. So in that, they are gauging our emotional template on what you give them. So when I shared that knowledge with a Māori tohunga, I suddenly saw he freaked out. He goes, oh, turn it off, darling. He freaked out, and he didn't realize that his views that he was giving was all corrupt, because he had always he viewed things from the glass half empty. So when I was able to show him, you're sharing information with these communities that aren't from here, but you're giving them the negative view because of what you're resonating. So that's why you stay in your joy space. So when you share, you're sharing the joy. So when I have to remember something, and all of a sudden they're bringing up a template of, why did this happen to you? Why did these people do that to you? Why did that happen? I literally have to make excuses for previous trespasses, because I have to remind them that not everybody knows what's been happening. There's a lot of subconscious manipulation. A lot of people don't know about the cabal. A lot of people don't know that evil hides in the light, and that the government that we think might be helping you isn't actually working for you in a loving capacity. It's just about business. And we all know that saying, it's not personal in business. So how can you work with them? They know that, they know that, that we want to move forward and keeping it in the remedy space. So if that's what you're going there for, what help do you need? What can I do? They'll bring up memories from your past, or they'll bring up a situation, and then you'll get questioned on it. You'll be sitting somewhere and you suddenly go into memory, and all of a sudden there's these questions about what you're looking at. That's the galactic communities trying to gauge. They're trying to get an understanding of us and how much potency we have. Or why did you do that in that moment? So when you review it, you're giving another perspective. So it's important to shed the correct light that, well, I was angry then, I did this, which made them do that. That's why that happened. Or I forgot about that. It looked like this to them, so they reacted that way. Because sometimes if you only give your side of the story, they don't get an accurate portrayal, because it comes down the ego. It's coming down one line. But we're not one line, we're collective. We're mammalian, and mammals are collective, whether we want to or not. We
Marina,
all feel the
sorry,
right.
I'm just going to cut in there for a second, just because it's like,
Yeah,
and and I'm sure everyone will agree, like, this is just so much amazing information, and it's so interesting. And hey,
they'd probably keep talking for about 2 weeks.
I know, and I could listen for 2 weeks. You are just like a wealth of, like, I mean, I'm definitely, this is not the end, because there's just endless areas that we can go. Hello. And it is absolutely incredible. And what I wanted to do was just check in with the group, because we're kind of going slightly on a different arena now. And I just wanted to check in and see if the group had any questions about anything we've talked about on this ancestral and land area, because Marina's just given us such amazing information, and I just wanted to see if anyone had anything that they wanted to bring through or ask her around all that first section. So yeah, so Samantha May, I don't know if you are, I have to, Sammy, oh, she's got a camera off, but so Samantha May is an absolute incredible sound healer. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's amazing, and she's just got back from hosting a retreat in Lake Rotopanamu, and yeah, she's, I love that you've touched into so many people in the group here, I think, in so many ways, in terms of ancestral, the work we are here to do, the land work, the sound. I love how you talk about the heartstone and the wharao and the, what do you call them? Is it you call it the pineal?
Manu,
The what?
pineal. The pineal, your adrenal glands, these are our access points to the celestial arena, all of the adrenals. So the
Yeah.
pineal gland,
What do
human,
you call it in
the liquid
Māori?
fatu manua. So manua means
Right.
heart, and fatu means eye. So when you go into the history of Māoritanga, it was the way to interpret what the heart felt to
Oh,
the higher self.
wow. Love that. And, it's like I always say to people, the mind should be a servant to the heart, not the other way around. And that
Right, that's
describes it
right.
perfectly. Amazing. So yeah, Sammy's asked if you could share anything you can about what we can do to clear the land.
Yeah, that's
That will lead into like some work that Marina and I have been talking about, actually. And yeah, Marina might, if we're lucky, start looking at doing some of this mahi with groups who want to move around with her, and maybe go on journeys with her to assist her in some of this work, and also to download more of her wisdom and knowledge around sacred areas and certain pieces of land. And I just think that this is such massive, amazing, important work, that, and you have so much wisdom. There's just so much we can learn from you and draw on. But is there anything, I mean, would you say that this work in general, I'm only speaking from the way you work and the way I work, would you say that this work in general is intuitive?
yes, most certainly. And you got to mix the intuition and the instinct together, because the
Mm.
instinct comes through your belly, and your intuition comes through your head and your heart. Hey, so
So the
your
more
belly
in
tells
tune
you.
we are with ourselves, the more the
Yes,
ancestors can send their messages through us. Like you're saying, you see the elementals in these tiny little flicks, um, and the way they show their messages. And actually, last week we did a shamanic journey. So I paired everyone up, and they went out into the ether, and they came back with an animal for their partner, and the animal gave them the animal medicine, and that was amazing. It was amazing what people brought back. And I think Erica brought through a deer for Sarah, and then Sarah went down to Lake Rotopanamu and at this retreat with Sam, and she sees this big picture of a deer on the wall. And so, you get these messages and then you get the validation of the message. So, they try and show us. And then if we're questioning, they give us a validation to make sure that the message has been cemented. And I love that. But if in terms of, the intuitive work, do you think even just listening to really evoking music and lying on the ground and just giving your love to that space, do you think that that is enough?
No, it
No.
does help. You're not wasting your time for sure. You're not wasting your time. Um, but clearing the whenua is more specific to the sacred locations because we
Mm,
all connect to those sacred locations.
mm,
So, with regards to the next locations that I have to go to, um, down south is another heart. There's a lot of, they put their ugly stuff right next to wahitapu, right next to sacred sites, on sacred sites even. So these are the locations that bring us and will bring us all our remembrance. The wisdom that I'm sharing is accessible to everybody because it's in your bones.
mm,
Your ancestors have already been here. You actually have those access codes. It's the whenua, it's the land that holds your key codes. So by coming together, every piece of land there has to be te reo codes because they're on Aotearoa, the land of the first light, and the protectorates were placed under those codes. Even if it's going back to some of the karakia so simple, the I or oo's, some of them it's just a recitation over and over to clear a space so that there are a lot of entrapped beings in a lot of these spaces. So there's a lot of things that are out of sorts in places because they're not meant to be there. And when you're there, you go and look and listen, but you actually need to have some interpreter. You need some
mm,
interpretation at first. Once you're on the land and you're present and your taringa, and then the inner ear we call the pū taringa. So when I recited those 12 rangis, you were getting access to free reign access to your higher self because it was basically just like opening a door while we're here right now because of where we're standing. If we were in Africa, it would be African tones. If we were in
mm,
somewhere in Norway, it would be, different tones because there's the original languages, going back to the original
mm.
13 tribes. So we all link into one of those 13, and most of us into a lot of different ones, and some of you into all. And so until you actually dig into yourself, once you go to a couple of locations and hear certain karakia on a location where the work's being cleared, then you get your access code. So I only know this because when we went to a couple of locations and people came to join us for the mahi, for the work, um, they expanded from that point out. And so
Mm.
some of the women, I was speaking to one of them today, Aikina, she's in Coromandel, and now she does a lot of the work with the mountains there because you don't know who you work with the most until you're present. And then all of a sudden, it might be the birds communicate with you more. It might be that you can speak with stone, which means that you can communicate with mountains. That's the hardest work. That's the most demanding because if you look at the size of it. And so that goes back to the indigenous lines.
So if,
But you,
for example, like I'm really drawn to stone, and I've always, wanted to be in caves, and I've often, gone, abseiling quite deep into the earth and through caves and in lots of countries. And as soon as I'm really deep down into cave spaces, my heart goes really, really slow. And I just feel this massive, I almost feel like disembodied, like I lose my body down there. And I feel like I'm home. So I
mm,
definitely feel a very deep connection to the stone. And the stone is
body
always
will go
with
through
me.
sorry, your body will go through physiological changes and shifts when you're in these spaces. And so when you start to notice those things, so how you said your heartbeat slows down, well, that tells me, yeah, you speak to mountains, because they're in the spaces where everything's still, everything's slower. So you're in a different time arena. So when your breathing changes or you start sweating more, they're all symptoms of something. And so you already have the key codes to it. So without knowing it, you're already working with stone. And so once we get to certain locations, there's certain places up and down our country that need to be cleared, because then it will amplify the people in the area. It'll help them to see the truth and get through all the smokes and mirrors. Because if we part of my work is to squash the altars, basically turn them off, disable them, whatever, the stuff that people don't need to know about what goes into it. Because for me it's simple. My ancestry was Churchill, so they were at the top of the rung of that, the pedigree stuff. So that gives your bone right access in certain ways. You don't indulge those desires or those worlds, because that makes you vulnerable. So when you stay on your path of what makes you passionate and what your values are, that's your key code, because you got to keep your values close, because you'll get tested. And then they'll test and test and test, and in those locations, once those things are disabled, the elementals can have freedom to speak. So the more people that are present, the more variation there is, because if you can imagine all the different light language, all the different languages of the elementals, we went through about 7 in the conversation this morning. There were about 7 that came through that connected to the water and the land, because in the spaces above the firmament, it's more water languages, because the firmament, there's no air up there because it's water. That's why the stars twinkle. The water was pushed out. That's why water gets let in every now and then, and we get a deluge again. Oh, someone let in more water, another deluge. So when you start to see how the matrix has already been locked in, you'll get that freedom via what works for you. So yeah, all I can advise now is to spend some time. The more you know about yourself, and if you're getting called to locations, to start looking into that. Start, if it resonates I think this is a really good summer to a lot of the beachfront places. There's so many domains and reserves we need to visit, and take our family and friends and just celebrate, just have a lovely picnic and go for a swim and take a look around and have a listen, because there's always something placed somewhere, and it might look a little bit darker, it might look out of place, but if you go and you see those out of placements, and if you can see those out of placements and you start questioning if it's in your lineage to address it, then it'll start rolling out to you. So that's where the intuition comes in. It's not that sitting at home and relaxing and doing those things and bedding in the whenua doesn't help, but it won't address the immediate needs, because you don't know which elementals need it. You don't know that in this domain. In one place we cleared, there was a hapu, or a tribe, that were living in the cliff face. They were a warrior tribe, so they didn't want to talk to me. They only wanted to talk to my partner, but they were stuck there. They couldn't leave our space because the doors had been closed before they had access to leave through the gates. So because we'd gone to clean the whenua, I cleared all the babies and brought all them into the nanny's bundle, and remembered their loving space. Because if the baby that was used against for the evil template, if you can help that baby or that being remember its loving space, sometimes that's all it takes. You just have to cuddle that baby. But in order to do that, you have to see the state it's being held in. And they're not held in good states, they're held in trauma. And you have to see that first and then cuddle it. Then that baby will get a remembrance by one of your memories, and then you've let that baby go. You've just freed the template, because there's no being holding it anymore. The baby's gone. They've just got an empty that's going to decay now, and they've lost their ability to hold there. So there's nowhere for that negative energy to go anymore, and the elementals can feed on it. It's like unplugging the matrix. Unplug the wire, and it'll pour out. So you have to be careful. You don't want to just let it go anywhere. But you acknowledge the elementals in the area, because it's their job to clean up the evil. We weren't supposed to do it. And we certainly weren't supposed to be laying it. But because man has laid it. Yeah. And so all of us have those, we know what love feels like. And that has the most power. So does laughter. When you can laugh knowing where you are and knowing what's going on, and you
Mm,
laugh at it, you can they'll leave the field. They will leave the field.
yeah.
So I think you'll all be pleasantly surprised at how simple it is to get to that remembrance space. You just got to take
Mm.
the time to give yourself.
Um, so oh my gosh, I feel like we could just go for hours and hours, but unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up. But I don't think this is the end of Marina, guys. So don't worry.
There's a lot of potency here in this
Yeah.
group because
Oh my
we're not
gosh.
allowed to go too deep.
Yeah, at some points I was literally like, I felt like I was about to just sort of, fall over my computer. And then at other points I was really nauseous. And so it's been really, really big energy here today. And I'm sure everyone has felt it. I can't wait to see the feedback when I post this video. But I think what we'll do is we'll wrap it up for today, and then really, really, I'll send you the feedback that we get. And I think what we'll do is Marina and I are going to continue our talks and our connection. And I think that some beautiful work is going to grow, that we might be able to partake in with her, and download and learn from her. So I think there'll be some opportunities coming up. And so it's amazing that I'm moving back to that side of the world in a week, so that hopefully I can come in and be a part of it. So I'll keep everyone
Can I
posted.
just ask, how many of these ladies, how many of you are all in New Zealand in Aotearoa?
All of them except Tony, who's in
Oh,
Sydney, in Australia, sorry, in New South.
ah, nice.
Yes.
Beautiful.
So I
Because
think
there's work going over to Australia too, eh? There's a lot going on there as well.
yeah, so much. So I'm going to connect with you, Tony, because I feel like there's work to be done there and connections to be made as well. So I think we could almost just have a Q&A with you, because there's just so much is going to be activated out of this session. And I'm
Okay.
really, really grateful that you've come on, and it's such short
Thank you for
notice.
inviting me on.
Thank you so much. Okay, so yeah, I don't know if you can see the comments, but yeah, yeah, so
Oh, beautiful.
definitely would love to chat with you again, and thank you for holding space. Who's this?
Yeah. This is Narayan.
Narian. Hi. Hi.
He's been on the field. He's been in the field.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, you can tell. So yeah, this beautiful, beautiful connection. I'm so grateful just to have your anchoring Māori wisdom, Waitaha wisdom, and just your understanding of elementals and interdimensional connections is also incredible. So yeah, so much more to come, guys. We'll keep you posted, and I'll just stop the recording.